Picture this. You've spent years building a restaurant empire. You've got brand recognition, loyal customers, and almost 100 bustling stores across the country. You are on the verge of becoming the next big name in fast food. Now, imagine shutting every single one of them down. This isn't a story about failure. This is the wild story of Fossos, the company that decided to tear down its physical empire because of one shocking piece of customer data. It's the story of how they spotted what every other restaurant was missing, and used that insight to build a new kind of business from the shadows. They created a multi-billion-dollar food giant that most people have ordered from, but have never actually seen. How on earth did they pull that off? Let's get into it. Section 1. An Indian dream with a familiar recipe. Our story starts in 2011, when two friends, Jaideep Barman and Kalal Banerjee, set out to solve a problem. Both were whip-smart, with MBAs from top universities and great careers. But they were annoyed by the lack of homegrown fast food in India. The market was flooded with Western giants like McDonald's and Domino's. Their idea: to create an Indian-born fast food champion. They launched Fossos, a quick-service restaurant specializing in Indian-style wraps and rolls, a modern twist on the classic Katie roll from their hometown of Kolkata. The concept was an immediate hit. It was fresh, fast, and felt familiar. Fossos started as a traditional brick-and-mortar chain, opening stores in busy areas of cities like Pune and Mumbai. The growth was explosive. They were playing the classic restaurant game, and they were winning. By 2014, Fossos had expanded to somewhere between 50 and 100 outlets across India's major cities and was backed by big-name investors like Sequoia Capital. They were seen as one of the most promising food startups in the country. On the outside, it looked like they were following the fast food playbook to a T. Open more stores, sell more food. But inside the company, the founders were starting to notice that the foundation of that playbook was cracking. Section 2. The unscalable wall of physical retail. Running a physical restaurant chain is a tough, cash-guzzling business, especially in India. While Fossos was growing, it was also bleeding money. The economics were brutal. The biggest drain was real estate. Prime locations meant sky-high rents, which could swallow up to 20% of sales. For every successful store, another one might fail, sucking up cash. Scaling was a complete nightmare. Every new restaurant demanded huge upfront investment, months of searching for the perfect location, and the headache of hiring and training a whole new team. The dream of having thousands of outlets like Domino's felt incredibly far away and wildly expensive. The very model that was supposed to bring them scale was, in reality, holding them back. Jaideep and Kalal were hitting a wall. Their growth was tied to how much cash they could burn on pricey real estate and how many daily operational fires they could put out. They were stuck. The more they grew, the more expensive and chaotic things became. They were winning small battles at the store level, but they were about to lose the war for profitability in true, massive scale. They needed a different plan, but they had no idea what it was. Section 3. The data point that changed everything. The answer didn't come from a fancy consultant. It came directly from their own customers. Around 2014, Fossos, which always had a tech-forward mindset with its own app and delivery system, ran a simple survey. They asked their delivery customers one direct question: have you ever actually visited a Fossos store? The answers that rolled in were about to spark a revolution. A jaw-dropping 70 to 76% of their delivery customers said no. Let that sink in. The huge majority of people ordering their food had never once stepped inside one of their expensive, carefully designed restaurants. They didn't care about the signs, the seating, or the experience. They just wanted the food, brought straight to their door. For the founders, this was a mind-blowing realization. They were spending a fortune on a part of the business that most of their customers never even saw. For a massive chunk of their business, the physical store wasn't an asset. It was a liability. Around the same time, Jaideep Barman heard about the concept of cloud kitchens at an entrepreneur summit, restaurants with no storefronts, built only for delivery. It clicked. The survey data was the proof. The problem wasn't the food or the brand, it was the stores themselves. Section 4. The Great Shutdown and the Pivot to the Cloud. This led to a radical, almost crazy decision. Starting around 2015, Fossos did the unthinkable. They began shutting down their restaurants. They systematically dismantled the very empire they had spent years building. They went dark, moving off the high street and into small, unmarked kitchens in low-rent areas. They were betting the entire company on that one statistic. They decided to become a delivery-only business. This was their pivot to the cloud kitchen model. By cutting out the dine-in experience, they slashed their costs. The crippling rent-to-sales ratio plunged from around 15 to 20% down to just 4%. They no longer needed prime locations, front-of-house staff, or expensive decor. All they needed was a kitchen, a cook, and an internet connection. This new model was lean, scalable, and perfectly matched what their customers had been telling them all along. By 2016, the transition was complete. Fossos had transformed from a brick-and-mortar chain into a cloud kitchen-only business. The move confused many in the industry at the time, but it would soon prove to be an act of genius. Section 5. The multi-brand food empire. Once they were free from the limits of a physical brand, the founders had their next big idea. If a customer never actually sees the restaurant, does the kitchen have to be tied to just one brand? The answer was a resounding no. A single, anonymous cloud kitchen could launch an infinite number of virtual restaurants. This insight was even more powerful than the first. In 2016, the company, which would officially rebrand its parent entity to Rebel Foods in 2018, launched its second brand, Barrow's Biryani. It was marketed as a premium biryani brand, completely separate from Fossos, with its own identity and menu. But here's the trick. It was being cooked in the exact same kitchens that were making Fossos wraps. This was the birth of their multi-brand house of brand strategy. They realized customers have different food missions. On a Tuesday, you might want a quick wrap for lunch Fossos. On a Friday night, you might crave a fancy biryani Barrow's. On a Sunday, you might be in the mood for pizza oven story or dessert sweet truth. Rebel Foods could serve all these cravings from one hyper-efficient kitchen. They started rolling out brand after brand, each hitting a different cuisine and price point. Oven Story Pizza, Lunchbox, The Good Bowl, and Sweet Truth, just to name a few. You could be ordering from 3 different restaurants on an app, but all 3 meals might come from the same Rebel Foods kitchen down the street. It was a brilliant way to max out their kitchen space and grab a much bigger piece of the food delivery pie. Section 6. The technology that holds it all together, juggling dozens of brands, hundreds of kitchens, and thousands of orders every day would be impossible without some serious tech. Rebel Foods isn't just a food company. It's a food tech company at its core. They built their own full-stack technology system that acts as the brain of the whole operation. This tech handles everything from managing the supply chain and predicting demand to automating parts of the cooking process. They even developed automated woks and other equipment to ensure that a Barrow's biryani in Delhi tastes exactly like one in Dubai, reducing the need for highly skilled chefs and guaranteeing consistency. Data is at the heart of every decision. They analyze ordering patterns in real time to figure out which brands to launch in which neighborhoods. They can test a new menu item or even an entire brand with minimal cost. If an idea doesn't take off, they just pull it from the delivery apps. No need to shut down a physical store. This lets them innovate and adapt at a speed traditional restaurants can only dream of. Section 7. Global domination and the future. Armed with this super scalable, tech-driven model, Rebel Foods started expanding like crazy. Today, it's the world's largest internet restaurant company. The company operates over 450 kitchens across more than 70 cities in India and has gone international, with a presence in countries like the UAE, UK, and Singapore. They've even started turning their operational know-how into a service. Through their Rebel Launcher program, they partner with other food brands, like Wendy's and Mad Over Donuts, to help them expand using Rebel's network of cloud kitchens. They're not just building their own brands anymore. They're becoming the platform that powers the future of food delivery. After hitting a valuation of over $1.4 billion, Rebel Foods is now eyeing a potential IPO in 2025 or 2026. This would make it the first cloud kitchen company in India to go public and would mark a huge milestone for the industry. Conclusion: the story of Fossos and Rebel Foods is a lesson in modern business. It's about listening to your customers, even when the data tells you something that sounds completely insane. They had the guts to tear down their own successful model to build something far bigger and more powerful in its place. They understood that in today's world, a brand exists on your phone screen, not just on a street corner. While competitors were battling over expensive real estate, Rebel was fighting for screen time and customer cravings. By ditching the storefront, they built a flexible, scalable, and wildly successful food empire from the shadows. It just goes to show that sometimes the biggest innovations don't come from a new invention, but from completely rethinking the system itself. So the next time you're scrolling through a food delivery app, you might just be browsing the aisles of a single, invisible Rebel Foods kitchen. What are your thoughts? Is this the future of all restaurants? Let me know in the comments.